welcome to On the Roadmap, a project manager's guide to growing in your career. Every week, we interview project managers in our community to learn hard facts about how they have grown in their career in ways that we can all apply. If you're here, I assume you're pressed for time like I am, and so we skip all of the traditional podcast fluff and get right into the facts. I'm your host, Michael Yaroshefsky, the CEO and founder of Visor, who is also the sponsor of this podcast. Visor is the beautiful, flexible portfolio project management solution that integrates with your apps like Jira and Asana. Today's guest is Elizabeth Jones. She's currently working at Coursera as a staff engineering operations manager, where she has successfully launched Gen AI projects at scale. She is a skilled and experienced leader who drives operational excellence and continuous improvement by leading teams to deliver impactful projects, particularly in the realm of technology and product development. She has a long and storied career, and we're delighted to have her on the podcast. So let's get her on the roadmap. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here this morning.
Yeah, likewise. Well, let's get right into it. As is tradition on the show, we get to know you by asking you this one question, the hot take question. Our viewers are interested in unique perspectives. So, what is one thing about project management that few others recognize or understand?
I'm not sure if this is not well understood, but I'm going to go with most of project management is really relationship management. And to be really successful as a project manager, it's really more about building the connections in the organization that you're working with and getting to know people and identifying how you can best help them through your project management skills. That's my hot take.
I like it. So, not project management, relationship management. I guess I'll ask you why did you come to that as your hot take? What through your experience has led you to realize this?
I think when I first started doing project management, I had a misunderstanding of my role, which is to say that I really felt like it was my job not only to keep track of things, but to really push people hard to meet deadlines and not
Mhm.
really discuss how the work got done, but just kind of check the boxes. I
Yeah.
think it's not super uncommon in talking with the folks that I've mentored. So I'm going to say that thankfully over time, I learned the importance of really working to help people deliver value. And
Yes.
sometimes that means a lot of negotiation. So building those relationships means that you can build trust, which makes that negotiation happen a little bit more smoothly. So lessons
That's
learned.
that's so topical and so timely. I'm seeing so much sort of discussion around how can we automate the parts of project management that are automatable using AI. And there certainly are some things, but it doesn't boil down to creating some type of AI that just asks for updates and asks people to work harder. It's really, as you're saying, it's about building trust. It's about negotiating, and I think that's an easy thing for people to misunderstand, but I like it. That's a hot take. So let's go on to the next question, which is actually segued nicely on that topic. So you have worked with Gen AI most recently at Coursera, specifically at a substantial scale. And I wanted to ask you, with that experience, what might be different about running an AI project as a PM versus any other type of project?
Um, I'll say the large differences may be somewhat contextual, but in my experience, Coursera is ed tech. So they're really focused on learning and education. And so what made this particular experience unique was that we didn't actually have any experts on using generative AI in-house.
Hmm.
So we could see that this was going to be the way of the future, that getting this type of learning in people's hands quickly was literally going to be life changing because jobs are changing, the industry is changing, and being able to embrace that is key. So collectively, we decided that we really just needed to kind of throw out our roadmap a little bit
Wow.
and say, how can we get really, really good at this so that we can teach other people how to make good use of it? And so that looked like the CEO tapping me. By the way, we don't have project managers at Coursera, but I have, a history of being known as a project manager. So the CEO was really just like, hey, can you lead a tiger team and go figure out how we might want to use this, how it works. Is it even technically feasible? And by the way, you have 90 days. So I think in terms of typical project management, it's not too unusual to have tiger teams or to kind of move quickly and break things. But what was unique was this was a technology that literally came out of nowhere, and we were absolutely building the plane while flying it. So
Yeah.
that was probably the key difference. And while we're running, kind of the technical feasibility study, we also know that we have 6 months to really get this incorporated into all of our products and into the market. And so simultaneously planning with, you know, many product pods, how can we really make good use of this so that it is providing value to our learners, to our partners, to the universities? What is truly meaningful to folks? And so really hitting the pavement, understanding what would be most valuable to those folks
Mhm.
as we're figuring out the technical feasibility. So it was just a very quick feedback loop of, okay, this is how it works. We can build it. We got legal to approve it. We have partners that are signing off on it. We've updated our contract. We've put it into our product and then got it out of the door. So I'm going to say it was just probably the most accelerated experience of project management that I have ever had.
Yeah.
And it gave me the opportunity to span the breadth of the entire organization for the first time, because everyone from the C-suite, all the way out to the go-to-market folks, were very involved. Everyone is figuring it out. It was hugely collaborative, and it was wildly successful. It was a fantastic experience and very unique.
That's so cool. Well, I think the most important thing you said that I respect and appreciate is that you had to figure out first where there was value to be had, because there are so many AI initiatives that are really a technical push. Just look at what we could do. And it's not really delivering value. In fact, my team did some research probably about a year and a half ago at this point, and we were kind of on the cutting edge of this, and we saw it coming. We're like, okay, what could we do with this? What if we made it possible to calculate things using AI? So, instead of having to write formulas in a formula language like you would in a spreadsheet, can you just say in plain English, like calculate, the estimated effort and convert it to story points based on the description of the ticket or something like that?
Right?
And what we discovered back then, and I think it's changed a little bit now, is I call it the scary white box problem, is when you're giving customers that open box where they have to fill information in and figure out what this could do. It's frustrating. So we actually took a different tact in our approach is let's make sure that there's value, like you said, and make sure that it's actually not just a technical push. But I think we're all in a very interesting spot where we have this new technology and it is a little bit of a technical push, and that's always typically a faux pas to use, let's foist this technology upon people, but truly now it's a new capability. So I'm curious, here's the question: how did you ascertain where the value was?
It was really about talking with professors, administrators, students. What are the things that Gen AI can do for you that would be most valuable? And I'm going to say, unsurprisingly, it was shortening the time it takes to do things like writing a syllabus, identifying items in the course catalog that would be of good use. How can you automate scoring and grading and do it well, even on things beyond, say, a multi-choice question? How can we use this effectively? And then on the other side of things, how can we use it to help ensure that students aren't using AI for their answers as well? Because if the point is really to get to critical thinking, it's how can we look for the critical thinking in their long form answers as opposed to just allowing someone to kind of provide back what I think we're all calling AI slop these days.
Yes.
So it was really through interviews, a little bit of data, looking at where are administrators and teachers spending the most time in our tools, because they have access to the platform and we can look at those eventing signals and then identify ways of shortening time. So I think initially it was really focused on saving time on things that don't require critical thinking and helping to protect the integrity of what the students were being tested on in terms of their critical thinking.
Like that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that angle of do work for them or save time for them is a great one. And I think that's where we're going. Hear a lot the joke of, I don't want AI to create a picture for me. I want it to do my laundry, you know.
Right.
But it really is like let's have it help us do the things that it can do perhaps as good, if not better, than we can, and leave us to do the things that are more meaningful. So yeah, well, I'm going to transition us to the second topic I have for us today, still related to this sort of world of pedagogy in a way, which is that you taught a course on technical project management. And I wanted to ask you, from that experience, what do you think is best learned, or perhaps can only be learned in a classroom? Because I know the contrarian or the normal perspective, mainstream perspective, I think is that you learn best sometimes by doing, and that's generally true. But I'm very curious, what do you think, as having been an instructor, your students learn better in the classroom?
Well, I actually think what they learned better in the classroom was accelerating what they might have learned by doing. That is
Mm,
to say, we certainly went through all of the normal, here's the slide, here's the framework, here's how it works. But we spent the majority of our time on, hey, I have had specific real world experiences where things went really well or have gone horribly wrong. Let me shortcut you to my lessons learned and then also give you the context about what happened, what I might do differently now, and then giving the students a chance to think and talk together about, hey, here's this real world situation.
mhm.
Does it make sense to you? What would you have done differently? And it was really having so many folks with a project management focus in the same room, problem solving together on real world use cases. So it gave them kind of the opportunity to see and explore with low consequences. Just I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, it sounds like it's the two things. It's that, and it's having multiple people with whom to explore together. It almost makes me wonder what. And I feel like I have this image in my head of generally project management, especially technical project management, is often a bit of a solo sport, where you've got your pod and you've got what the projects you're working on. But I don't think if we often find or think about scenarios, correct me if you've seen it otherwise, but where you have multiple project managers working simultaneously on the same thing. I don't think it's usually a very hierarchical structures, correct?
That is exactly my experience as well. I think the closest that you could get might be local meetups or user groups or things of that
Yeah.
nature, but they're not as focused. And even then, it's maybe you get to talk about one use case in a month, where this is every time you get together 3 times a week, that is what your focus is. So I felt like it was just a very accelerated mentorship, honestly.
That's wild. Yeah, I wonder what problems, I'll pose this to you as a follow up question. What problems do you think are the types of problems where it would be good to find somebody else on your team or in your corner to work on it together when you're in the trenches and you have all this responsibility solo?
Yeah, I think there's a few. Very few of us work in an environment where you're following the book. It doesn't matter whether you're doing waterfall or agile or whatever the current methodology or framework is that is popular. To be quite honest, all of us exist in the gray areas, and I think that's where tricky conditions can come up if you don't have a ton of experience, because there isn't a guidebook. And while I definitely recommend always looking into root causes, leveraging those relationships in your organization that have deep context around what's happening, sometimes I think it can be really great just to go get a diverse view set, especially from people who aren't too close to the problem, because
Mhm.
they might have a fresh way of looking at things that can really help you solve those complex and unique issues. So I'd say anytime that you have access to a mentor or to a group that you know can help you move forward, and if you can figure out a way to kind of share the root cause in a way that's generic enough that you're not guiding them to your answer, I think that's where the benefit is. And I'll be honest, I have been stuck uh, many times in my career and happily reached out to solutions architects and engineering managers that I've still maintained my relationships with in my network and gotten help from them myself.
Wow.
So it's always good to ask.
That's a testament to your first point that we began with. If this is a relationship business, it's not just with the people with whom you're doing your work, but your network, your mentors, to be able to get that help. That's really interesting. Well, I always like to get really concrete, so I hope you don't mind me putting you on the spot. But can you think of a very concrete example of when you did go out for that, mentorship, or just working with peers? I'm curious how that played out. What project was it?
Yeah, absolutely. So a few years back, I worked for a company called Odyssey, and I was building the PMO and running it, and COVID hit, and really all of our funding kind of dissipated very quickly, and we all scrambled to work from home, and it was incredibly disruptive. I was brought on to help run a digital transformation. They are a large terrestrial radio station owner across the entire US. And we're moving to compete with the likes of iHeartRadio and Spotify and needed to develop apps and web presence and streaming for podcasts and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And again, this was unique work. And suddenly we're all kind of working remotely and our funding is disappearing quickly, but we have some dates that can't move. So literally, as part of this rebrand, our CEO was ringing the bell at the stock exchange on a set date. And running the numbers on this project, I could tell that I needed X number of people in X amount of time, which was roughly double what I had available to me. So it was one of those situations that I was put in where I had worked there 2 weeks. Suddenly my entire world is upended.
Yeah.
Everyone is anxious and stressed and doing their best. And I just remember feeling so overwhelmed that I wasn't able to think through in a way that I trusted. So I reached out to my network and I was like, hey, I'm in this situation. Here's how I'm planning to approach it. Please tell me what you see that is going to be a problem. Can we do a pre-mortem before I get into this, because there is no margin for error. And we walked through that. So I came with some specific things that I had flagged. They helped review my materials. They flagged some new things. And I was essentially taking 75 engineers, growing them out to 300 in this period of time. And so it was every project that I had kind of done, just in its most intense format. And by the way, they didn't have, shared language or shared workflows. They hadn't really worked together. It was a very immature process. And so I'll be honest, I was very honest with them. I'm like, I'm going to be transparent with you through this entire process. This is nearly impossible, but I still believe that we can do it. And here's why. Are you willing to go on this ride with me? And I said, as much as we can be collaborative and open as possible, I want you to know that I'm also talking to some industry professionals that I really trust and have had great success with. And occasionally I may have to ask you to do something. And if you could just trust me and try it, I'm going to call it eating our broccoli, which means this isn't going to be fun. I think we're going to be better off for it. And so some of those tricky spots, as we came across them during this project, either around reprioritization, what features we had to trade off, how we got the knowledge in-house that we needed it fast enough, how we used Jira, everything that you can think of. We would just have this conversation. I'd run out to my mentors and say, help me prep. This is what I'm doing. Can we go? And I ended up introducing large-scale Scrum, which was new to everyone, so I'm training them on the aspects of it so that they can understand and build that trust, move us through it, and just kind of orchestrated things. And I will tell you, we finished the night before. It was successful. And David Field did ring the bell of the New York Stock Exchange. We made it. It was amazing and terrifying, but we were all better off for it.
That's wild. So I just wanted, and really quick then, you had this sort of like scope problem where you needed double the resources. Did you cut the scope in half? How did you get there?
Well, essentially, what we did was we were really focused on prioritization every 2 weeks. And it was, okay, here's how far we made it. This is what we said
Mm,
was important. Is that still true, or is there something else that's going to provide more value? Because we are dropping things.
yeah.
So essentially, we just had to be really relentless about
Yeah.
focusing on value and dropping anything that wasn't absolutely necessary to achieve the goals that were going to benefit everyone the most.
That makes a lot of sense of just, every week, where did we get and recalibrating rather than some crazy, you couldn't even wait for, I don't know what your cadence if you did sprints, but you couldn't even wait 2 weeks.
We did.
Literally every week, it's just, what did we get? I like that. Well, that makes a lot of sense. So, well, we are approaching the end of the show already. We've got so much great depth here, but I want to wrap up with my favorite final question, which is sort of passing the baton to the next guest. What questions do you want other uh, guests on the show, generally within project management, to answer?
Oh, goodness. I am always most interested in hearing the challenges that are happening right now, and not only the methods that folks took to overcome them,
Mm.
but largely what was the outcome. And I love to hear about successes and failures. So honestly, I'd love to hear some good project management fails so that I don't have to repeat them.
That Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In fact, I'm a big aviation enthusiast working on a helicopter pilot license, and there's plenty of books where it's literally just like what went wrong, and it's a little morbid, but like in this incident, what went wrong and what could have been avoided. And I think that's how we grow. That's why aviation becomes safer and safer. And I think we all in all fields can take a similar approach of not just glorifying the successes, which I think in many cases have a lot to do with luck sometimes or circumstances. But I think the failures are where you can learn. So I like that. I will take that and run with that and report back. Um, well, thank you so much. That's about all the time we have on this episode of On the Roadmap. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for joining us. Thank you, Visor, for sponsoring us. Thank you to all of the audience members and viewers for tuning in and investing this time in yourself, which is so important. Until next time, I'll see you on the roadmap.